How's everybody doing? This is Brock with Straight Line Delivery, and I wanted to make a video today that discusses why I believe most owner-operators fail, whether they're under their own authority or they sign on with somebody else and run under their authority. I talk to people who are really misguided all the time about how trucking works, and I've laid out basically 3 examples that kind of show why hard work doesn't really mean as much in this industry as it would maybe in another industry. I talk to a lot of people who say, I'm going to get into trucking. I'm going to work really hard 4 days a week and then take a 3-day weekend every week. Or I'm going to work really hard 2 weeks out of the month and then I'm going to take the other 2 weeks off because I'll have the money because of how hard I've worked the other 2 weeks. You know, I've seen in trucking, you can double, triple your income compared to what I'm used to making. So no brainer. I'll have all this free time. And I asked them, what does hard work mean to you? Define to me hard work. And that answer, it seems to depend on where you came from. So what kind of industry you were in will define what hard work means. And I've kind of laid out 3 different examples, with trucking being one of them, of how you work and make the most money. And hard work, depending on how you're defining it, may not be exactly what you need to make money in trucking. And here's an example. When I was in my 20s, I was in construction. So I could bid to dig a ditch or some post holes for somebody. And if I could come in at the same price or less than they could hire equipment for, then I could put in some hard work and actually make more money that way, because instead of it taking me 3 days, if I'm working hard, that means flexing my muscles, gritting my teeth, and really getting after it, working hard. Then yes, of course, I can earn more money, because instead of spending 2 days or 3 days at a site, maybe I work hard and I spend just a day and a half doing this project. That opens up another day and a half to work for basically free, because I've worked so hard that I've freed up my schedule to do more jobs. All right, that's an example of working hard. When it comes down to the kind of work we're talking about, there's basically 3 ways I know of to make money. You can work hard, you can work smart, and you can work long. Sometimes you can do all 3. So an example of a guy with a shovel or a post hole digger who wants to work hard, smart, and long, he jams that post hole into the ground as hard as he can, opens it up, and gets that dirt off, busts it out on a rock, and does it again as many times as he can, skips lunch. He planned to have all his stuff in his truck Monday morning, ready to go, working smart, got up at 5:30 in the morning, was on the job by 6:15, daylight, and he worked hard, he worked smart, he had everything set aside that he needed to do the job. No running back and forth to Lowe's. No, not this guy. He's working hard and he's working smart. And then, hey, there's enough light even after dark. In the summertime, it doesn't get dark till what, 9:30, 9:45 in some spots? He's going to work long. He's going to work till 11 o'clock the first night. And by doing that, my gosh, he's worked hard. He's worked smart because he did everything on time. He showed up with all the tools he needed. And then he worked long. He worked long into the night and maybe knocks the whole project out in 1 day. That puts you a full day and a half to 2 days ahead of what you thought your schedule was going to be. And that's an example of, all right, I can work hard, I can work smart, and I can work long, and I can get this knocked out. He could go home and sit on his butt Tuesday and Wednesday, start again Thursday, and still be in the same spot. Okay? Now, if you had a skid steer, all right, let's say you had a skid steer. You're going to do the same job. You're going to dig post holes for a guy, right? You can work smart. You can have all your equipment on your truck Sunday, ready to go Monday, get up on time, communicate with the customers, tell them when you're going to be there, make sure everything's clear, make sure you're fueled up, everything's going to work, your battery connections are clean, this thing's definitely going to fire up, doesn't have any flat tires, I'm ready to rock and roll. That's working smart. He can get there early and he can work long. Okay. He can, instead of take lunch, if he's almost done in 3 or 4 hours, he can skip lunch, knock that out, load up the Bobcat, then get lunch and go on to his next job. That's an example of working long, skipping your lunch. But he can't really work hard. If you're running a skid steer, you're running a Bobcat or a bulldozer, backhoe, take your pick. You can grit your teeth and you can flex your muscles, but you're not working any harder. The machine is going to do what it's going to do. You can't do it any harder. You can't physically make it go any faster. The machine has its limits. You can work it to its limits. You can have everything ready, but you can't work any harder. Because when you're talking about introducing a piece of equipment into the equation, the piece of equipment has a set value, and it's kind of the star of the show, all right? So the only reason I would get jobs when I was in my 20s that I could work hard and make money at is a guy's going, okay, I need 20 post holes dug. If I hire a guy with a Bobcat and he comes out here and does all this, I'm going to be $1,000 into this job. But hey, if you and your buddy, if you guys want to go out there and do this by hand, as long as it's done by Wednesday, I don't care. I'll pay the money to you. And that's how we got jobs. When I got into equipment, a little different story. Think about this. The best equipment operator that there is, that you know, and the worst one, their equipment makes the same amount of money because it does the same exact thing. Now, one's going to be more of a pain in the butt to deal with. He's not going to be as professional. One's going to get a whole lot more word of mouth, and he's going to do a whole lot better in business if he works smart and he works long to make sure he gets customers' jobs done in a reasonable amount of time. But the guy who sucks at his job and the guy who's awesome, they're going to make the same amount of money if you're just talking about pushing dirt with a machine or doing anything with a machine, because it's only worth a certain amount of money. Now, in trucking, you're hampered by a few things. In trucking, the way I see it, you can only really work hard when you're loading and unloading, like physically tarping, strapping, chaining stuff. You can work hard then, you can hustle. But in trucking, you can't work long because you're federally regulated to take breaks, to, take resets. You have to stop and fuel. You have all these things that you have to do. There are so many things that can get in your way that the equipment can be doing its max, but if you aren't proficient in your time and your planning, if you don't have good decisions being made behind the scenes, you can still fail and be working hard. In trucking, I can't stress this enough. Time is of the essence. So delivering a load at 8 in the morning versus delivering it at 11 a.m. can be a world of difference because your 14-hour clock is now on. So if you deliver later in the day, you run into some traffic, it causes you to mix your next pickup, you've just lost a full day's wages because you have to now take a 10-hour break. You are stuck. The federal regulations are that you have to stop working. You don't have the choice to run your equipment all night long if you want to. You can't grit your teeth and make the truck go any faster. You've got speed limits you have to obey. So every setback affects your ability to earn money. Your 14-hour clock is ticking. And when it stops, it's a hard stop. There's no cheating that. There's no getting back from that. So you've got to maximize the amount of smart work you do. You can't work any harder. You can't work any longer. And the hard part of the work, okay, you can hustle when you're strapping stuff down. How much of your day is that? Not much. You strap stuff, you unstrap stuff, and then you get down the road. So that's such a small fraction. The physical effort that you can put in and try hard, that is such a small fraction of the way a truck earns money. It's not worth focusing on. And another thing is, when I would be doing some manual labor, some sort of construction job, on a commercial site, whether it's a building a house or a commercial building, I could show up at 5 o'clock in the morning and start doing work if I wanted. I could stay till 11 o'clock at night. Nobody cared. I'm just moving dirt. I'm just doing whatever. But here, you've got to remember you're picking up and dropping off at facilities where people work a 7 to 3 or a 9 to 5 type job. You are so limited by your customers' availability. Federal regulation, speed limits, you've got all this working against you. So working hard and working long is not an option. It's so critical that whoever is booking the loads for you, whoever's dispatching you, that they're doing everything right. And remember, time is of the essence. We've got a big clock back here just constantly ticking. Every second counts. And when you lose a second, that's it. It's gone forever because you have to take that 10-hour break. I've got some notes here. I didn't want to miss anything. I wanted to be clear about what I was talking about. If you don't have effective dispatch, you're not going to make the kind of money that I'm talking about, that I often talk about. Bringing home 3,000 to 4,000 plus a week, depending on what you want your schedule to be. Now, I see guys hauling campers, like retired guys. Guys don't need a new truck, but they don't really have the money to pay for it. You can go haul campers and burn up a truck, and it'll last 3 or 4 years. And who cares? You put 300,000 or 400,000 miles on it. Fine, whatever. If you don't have a family to support, you can just go. You can go get a truck and a trailer, and if your goal is to bring home $1,000 a month after expenses, or $1,000 a week, I mean, you can probably do that. You don't have to take any of this that seriously. As a matter of fact, if you want to make $1,000 a week, go do whatever you want. You'll find some freight. You'll do whatever. But a ditch digger and a framer, somebody that frames houses, they can hustle and make more money. You can even hustle pouring concrete to a certain extent, but there's a certain point where you just have to sit back and let that concrete dry up to the point where you can get your knee pads on it and you can get out there and start finishing it. So everything, and that's another thing. Every industry is so different. If you come from moving dirt background and you go to finishing concrete, well, a concrete finisher, I did this for years, you'll work and they figure, well, this size pad, this is going to take the day. Well, the day can be over at 3:30 and the day can be over at 9:30 at night. If you get a cool front come in and the clouds come in and that concrete just won't set up, you're there till it's done. You've got to kind of plan on that, but you never know if you're going to be paying your guys for 8 hours or 16 hours because things go poorly. And that's where you start to run into a little bit more trouble. That's where you have to start to think, okay, I've stepped up in what I'm doing as far as complexity. Now you've got all these other tentacles coming in that demand my time. Oh, did the concrete truck driver slop it out so thick that we had to rake it back and that cut into our time? Did he mix it too wet so now that it's going to take hours to dry? There's so many other variables that you have no control of that make it so much more difficult to bid a job when you're pouring concrete than if you're just moving dirt, let's say. And this is another thing. A truck, I don't care what people say, a truck is only worth so much per mile. If you think I'm not right, look in the paper. See what they're hiring truck drivers for. To drive somebody else's truck, you get 65 cents a mile, let's say. That's because they're collecting X amount of dollars for you to move that freight. If you're really, really good truck driver, if you're the best ever, you don't get more per mile. Why? Because the truck is the star of the show. The 48-foot or the 40-foot flatbed and what it can haul, there's already kind of a set premium for that truck. And I'm not talking about crazy military loads or emergency loads. I'm just saying, generally speaking, depending on the lane, Chicago to Pittsburgh pays this much, Pittsburgh to Cincinnati pays this much, or whatever. You know what the lanes pay. They vary. They kind of go up and down depending on fuel and time of year. But more or less, your truck's worth what it's worth. So working hard is not going to make you any more money. Again, that's why it's so important to have freight set up the right way, staggered properly, in a time that you can get it. Again, time is of the essence. So you can say, hey, that load sounds really good. That's a good deal. I'd like to make that deal. But then you find out, well, it doesn't load till 2 in the afternoon. All right, well, what's that mean to me? Well, this other load I've promised to drop off at 6. See how your clock's just burning with you doing nothing? Now we get to 2 o'clock. It's not quite ready yet. I think it'll be ready at 3. Now it's 3 o'clock. Now it's 4 o'clock. Oh, I don't think we can load it till tomorrow. That kind of stuff screws you out of a whole day of pay. Even shippers and brokers, direct shippers, freight brokers, they seem to have sometimes an unreal sense of time and money. And that's where a good freight coordinator comes into play. I've got some direct clients will call me and say, hey, how much for this run? And I'll price it out. And they'll say, well, wait a minute. Why are you charging me more? It's the same product. It's the same exact amount of miles as this other load. And you're charging me more. Not all freight is equal. If you're on a bulldozer making a driveway for a new home, you're pushing dirt, all right? You figure it's this long, it's this wide, it's going to cost me this many hours. I can run into some roots and some big rocks that are a little bit of a hassle, but nothing much. I know what this costs. With freight, not all freight is equal. Not all lanes are equal. So if you're sending my truck from a good spot out to the middle of nowhere, I have to price in the fact that I'm going to have to drive empty, and not just the fact that I'm driving empty, but can I make it back to another city that actually has freight in the allotted 7 to 3 work hours or loading hours that I generally am working with? Can I get back there in time to get reloaded with something else that'll make sense, that won't put me so far behind that I'm screwing up my 3rd day of freight? It all connects so much because you have this tight timeline. You start here, you break here, your 10-hour break starts here. Boom. You cannot cheat any of that. When you're talking about bidding loads, bidding work, keeping all that in mind, you have to watch out for your bottom line. So I always tell people, of course we'll go there. We'll do anything for money, and here's what it costs. You're sending me way out of my comfort zone, way out of where I can make money, and that's fine, but you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for that truck to come back to a city where I know I can get freight again, or you can find somebody else to do it. And if you're one of the ones who don't know what you're doing, guess what? You're going to be the someone else that does it because you don't know any better. You're going to be taking these loads that you shouldn't be taking, and you're going to be fined for a year. You can, as I call it, use your truck as a credit card for a year. And then you're going to need new tires and brakes. And then this seal that's really hard to get to is going to start leaking, and that's going to be $3,200. And before you know it, you've run so many miles and you've worked so hard, but you don't have the money to show for it, and now your equipment's wearing out. I guess not understanding those costs is what makes most new owner-operators, not understanding those basic principles and not having the 3 T's, the time, the tools, and the talent to execute those. You cannot drive a truck and negotiate great freight prices at the same time. I don't believe you can do it because I've tried to do it and it's just too much. So if you don't have someone behind the scenes, someone in your life that can get you good quality freight, and I mean they have to be able to book it tight. They have to keep in mind how long it'll take you to drop off over here, drive over to here, get loaded here, drive and deliver that, and what time will it be on day 3 when you deliver that? If they can't plan at least 3 days out, you have no business trying to book freight. It's not like having a bulldozer. It's not like working a hand shovel and bidding jobs for people. All the best intentions in the world fail in this industry just because there are too many things to consider, and if you haven't considered them, you probably shouldn't be in trucking. Now, I don't want to end on a negative note. Before you get into trucking, before you buy a truck, even if you want to work for yourself and you have no intention to work for me, shoot me an email with some questions. Give me a call. I'll tell you what I really think about your plan, how much money you need to make, and whether it's realistic. So drive safe out there, guys. I hope this helped. Get a hold of us if you have any questions. Call us, email us. We love to help people. I don't want to see anyone fail. I want to see everyone do a great job. Maybe we can work together in the future, and maybe I can help you make your future better. Simple phone call won't hurt. Thanks, guys.